Linda.
Hi, Nancy.
Welcome to Season 1, Episode 19 of the Front Porch Book Club.
The Front Porch Book Club is a podcast that meets twice a month.
And we like to dig deep into the relationship between characters and the worlds they live in.
Grab your book and iced tea and join us on the Front Porch.
So, Lenny, today is the first time we've featured a children's book on the Front Porch.
Well, it is the holidays, you know, and I think it's fitting.
It is fitting.
But yes, the book that we're going to talk about is Tea with the Queen by Chrissy Hart. It's December, and if you're looking for a book for a young child in your life, this may be a book for you.
Yeah, this is a really fun book. But now you actually know the author, don't you?
Oh, well, yes. She is actually family on my husband's side.
Aw.
She married my husband's first cousin. She is a child psychologist, so on a professional level, she's been interesting to know throughout the years.
Yeah.
And I followed her career and got together as family and such. So yes, I thought having her be our December person and talking to her about her book would be just perfect for Christmas.
Well, I bet you two have a lot to talk about when you get together, because with her family psychology background, and I know you love the counseling work you do with children also.
Right. Yeah, she's a lovely person. Now, here's the funny thing. Chrissy lived in England for a long time. So as I read her book, I was listening to her English accent as I was reading it. It adds a certain flair to us Americans to hear a book with an English accent when you're talking about Tea with the Queen.
So is she born in England?
No, I believe she was born in Greece.
She has an English accent, though.
Yeah, they moved to England, and that's where she met my husband's first cousin, and they got married.
Okay.
But she has a lot of books from her Greek Orthodox background.
Okay.
And so she is Greek, but she has the wonderful English accent, which goes so well with the book.
Oh, anytime you're talking about having tea with anyone, I think it enhances it if you're saying that with an English accent.
So I could hear her voice as I read the book.
I love it.
Hey, Nance, you were an avid reader.
I was.
What was your favorite children's book when you were little?
You're right. I read so many books when I was little. I can remember going to the library and checking out armfuls of books for the week and then reading them all and going back and getting more armfuls of books. So there are many, many books to choose from. But one of the first books I remember reading that really had a very emotional impact for me was a book called The Little House. It's by Virginia Lee Burton, and she is the same author who wrote Mike Mulligan and his Steam Shovel. Do you remember that book?
Yeah, absolutely remember that.
Yeah. So this is not quite as well known as Mike Mulligan, but I remember reading this book. It's about a little house that lives out in the country and has a little family, and the town that is kind of close to the house is growing and growing and growing, and then eventually grows up and around the little house. And it's surrounded by tenements and smog and pollution. And it's a very sad little house by this time. I think the owners now have died or moved away or something. And then a new owner comes along, buys the little house, and tows it out to the country. Then it's a little house in the country again.
Oh,
yeah. I actually think that book is one of the reasons I majored in urban and regional planning.
really?
Because I have always liked cities. And I think that the little house casts such a negative view of cities. And I thought, well, I think cities can be great and wonderful places to live. And I want to learn how we can plan cities better so the little house isn't quite so sad.
That's A little story. How old do you think you were?
Well, it's a very young book. My guess is I was probably 4 or 5.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, how about you? Did you have a favorite book that you can think of when you were growing up?
That's a good question. You got piles and piles of books out. I may have had to wander around to find one and probably didn't read that, but I did like the little Madeline in her yellow coat. I liked her a lot.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, we did have that book somewhere.
We did, yeah.
I liked that. I did like Curious George and
Okay.
the man with the yellow hat. Maybe I had something with yellow. I don't know.
Yeah, it might have been yellow.
But the book that stayed with me is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
What?
Yes. My teacher read it in 5th grade, and ay, ay, ay. I read it as an adult. I read that book to my child. It is just so fanciful
Yeah.
and full of such vivid illustrations that, like, he writes it and you can just picture it in your mind.
Yeah.
So yeah, C.S. Lewis I'm going to go see the movie, Nancy, tomorrow. I can't wait, the C.S. Lewis movie.
Do you know what? I saw it a couple of nights ago and it was really good.
Oh, good. I'm so glad.
Yeah.
I'm so looking forward to it.
And the movie we're talking about is The Most Reluctant Convert, which is kind of a biography, really, of C.S. Lewis and his spiritual journey.
Yeah, that sounds good. I already know about his books. So,
yeah.
Yeah, his background and his spiritual journey, it would be interesting to me. Oh, and Little House on the Prairie.
Oh, yeah.
That's probably near the top because I read more than one book. I read that one, and then I read, is it The Big House or?
Yeah, Big House in the Woods is the first one. Yeah.
I read that one. So that one caught my attention to read at least one or two of her other books.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was near the top of a special. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, those
Laura
are
Ingalls.
Yeah, those are great books for sure. But
yeah.
I am fascinated that Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe is one of your favorite books because I did not know that we shared C.S. Lewis as a favorite author.
Really?
Yeah, I really didn't know that. Whenever anyone asks my favorite book, I always say, and this is not a children's book, but I always say Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. And that's just fascinating to me that when we talk about favorite books for a children's book, yours is C.S. Lewis's Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe. Talk about someone who had quite a broad and successful writing career.
He did have. And you know what? I would say The Lion and the Witch and the Wardrobe is one. And the very last Narnia book is my second. Like that is just beautifully.
Yeah, The Last Battle, well. Right?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. I'll tell you, the last 3 paragraphs of that last book never get old.
I don't know that I remember the last 3, but the imagery that I remember is the children are leaving Narnia and they're going to heaven.
Right.
And then you realize that the kids have died.
Yeah.
On the train platform.
Yeah.
And that they're actually going to heaven. And the vivid description of how they feel in the bodies and going to Aslan and joy and what they're seeing. It's so beautiful and it's so believable, I guess. It's just like happy. It's not scary. It's not sad. It's just a joyful part. So I just love that last chapter of that book. Has stayed with me.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful conclusion to that whole series too.
Yeah.
Did you read the Chronicles of Narnia to your son?
When he was little, I read all of those books to myself. I did read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe to Seth. And he loved it.
Yeah.
He loved the book, I think, as much as any little person could love it.
Mm-hmm.
And completely drew him into, Narnia, what was happening there.
Yeah, that is a great series to read to children. The one thing that I was thinking about when we selected having a children's book for our December book is just the importance of reading aloud to children. I've been involved in an effort here in Lincoln that promotes reading aloud to children. And, it's just so important. There was a groundbreaking study in 1985 that concluded, and I'm quoting here, the single most important activity for building knowledge for children's eventual success in reading is reading aloud. It strengthens parts of the brain related to visual imagery, story comprehension, and word meaning. And kindergartners who were read to at least 3 times a week had significantly greater phonetic awareness. So all these great cognitive and communication skills, but also hearing stories teaches children to use their words to describe difficult feelings and to better control their behavior when faced with those feelings. I think having a children's book is great for us, and maybe will spur people who hadn't thought about reading aloud, even to young children, like to babies. It can be so important.
Because we were raised with a mom who did read to us. And
yes.
One of those beautiful memories as a child was the 3 of us curled up around her in her big bed.
Yeah.
Listening to her read stories.
Yeah.
The ones that I remember had beautiful pictures.
Yep.
And had meaning, morality, a Christian message. And so I remember those lovely books, but I also just remember kind of the closeness and that special time as a family. So as a mom myself, I read to Seth when he was a baby.
Yeah.
I would put him in the chair. I would rock Good Night Moon.
Oh,
thank goodness.
Oh, that's such a good one.
Every night, Good Night Moon. And there were other ones that we read. And just as he grew, obviously the books changed.
Sure.
There was a beautiful one with a rainbow. There was a beautiful one where a boy climbed to the moon on a tall, tall ladder.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Loved that book. And Seth loved that book. And now he's studying the stars and the galaxies. Curious George, he had one of the galaxies too that we looked at.
Oh, right.
Thank goodness that mom passed that on to us, and I passed that on to my son. I hope he has nice memories too of just reading when he was little. And I think we even said it's mommy's bed. I said, okay, now it's mommy's bedtime or something like that. Oh. And it was like mommy's room, or it's time for mommy's room after he brushed his teeth or whatever. And he'd jump in and we would cuddle and read all of those wonderful books. So great memories there. But I will say this, because you did talk about reading, that because I read to him and he did understand phonics or something, I did not teach him to read. But I remember before he got to kindergarten, I was reading him Hop on Pop, and he started reading it. And I was like, oh, he just knows this book. And then I realized, I don't know if his finger was reading along, but I realized he now knew how to read. It wasn't just that he was imitating me. That's what started him reading. And I remember before kindergarten, he was a reader. So he had a great background. If I wouldn't have been reading to him, he wouldn't have known it. But it was because I read to him every night that he was able to pick up the phonics and the patterns. And Dr. Seuss did such a great job of keeping those sounds simple and all of that great stuff. So thank you, Dr. Seuss.
I used to love reading at night also to my son. But my problem is I get too engrossed in stories. And so bedtime would come and go, and we would still be reading. And it was just, one more chapter. Oh, okay. So we'd read another chapter. Oh, just one more chapter. Okay.
You were eager to. You were eager to keep reading. Oh, that's so wonderful.
I do want to say something about mom reading to us, though. You remember all of these wonderful stories with a nice Christian message and whatever. One of the stories I remember her reading to us was about a little boy who got eaten by a crocodile when he tried to cross the river. I couldn't believe it. I was totally scandalized as a little person. I was like, what kind of books is mom reading to us?
In the world?
And I couldn't even sleep that night, I remember, thinking little boys get eaten by crocodiles?
What was the moral of that story?
There wasn't.
Stay out of the creek? That is horrible.
It was horrible.
Now that you say that, I do remember a crocodile and a little boy. I have no idea. There was one, however, and then we'll talk about Chrissy's book about the lady who saved her daughter from a fire and got scarred. And her daughter was always so embarrassed because her mom's hands were scarred, and maybe her face was too. And then her mom told her why her hands were scarred, and that was because she saved her from the fire.
Oh, I do remember
that. The little girl was not.
Then the little girl was ashamed.
Yeah, well, hey.
The moral of that story is you should be grateful for your parents.
Well, that's probably why Mom picked it.
Man, I should have read that book.
Oh my goodness, the little boy got eaten by a crocodile. This is a horrible thing.
I can still remember the illustrations of that little boy getting eaten by the crocodile.
Oh my goodness, this is horrible. Well, let's just say Tea with the Queen has no horrible scarring.
Let's move
Bambi
on.
Doesn't die. Bambi's mom doesn't die. This is just a beautiful book.
Yeah,
thank
good point.
goodness. Well, and it's English, so it's very proper.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, first of all, I like the book. I like the pictures. The illustrations are just beautiful in this book.
Yeah.
It's about a little mouse, Charlie.
He's so cute.
He is really cute. And he goes on an adventure with his grandparents. And they've been invited to have tea with the Queen because Grandma is turning 100 years old.
Yeah.
So he's off on this adventure with his grandparents. Okay, so first of all, I did say that Chrissy, by profession, is a child psychologist. So when you're looking for meaning in books, she's all over this because I love how the little mouse, Charlie, saves the day.
Right.
And his experience of going through the adventure of getting to England and having his tea, he runs into mean dogs.
Yeah. But terrifying corgis.
Yeah, well, when you're a mouse.
Good point.
Grandma faints,
True.
But Charlie has some old licorice in his pockets, and he gives them to the dogs, and he says, that's going to keep him busy for a while.
Yep.
Enough to get Grandma up and get them to safety.
Right.
And there's another one where they fly on a goose. And that's quite a little ride.
Yeah.
But the grandparents kind of scold the goose for being like a wild flyer. And Charlie has fun.
Yeah.
So in the face of scary things, and there is another time in the book he is scared.
Yeah.
I like the fact that she's bringing in a feeling and how Charlie overcomes it.
Yeah.
It's stuff that you can draw on, after you're done reading the book to a child, talk to your child about, what did Charlie do when he was scared or those kind of things. So I like that part of it.
I agree. It was not a scary book, though. I mean,
No,
you're not going to read this with your child, and your child is going to remember Charlie's adventure in the same way I'm remembering the boy who got eaten by the crocodile.
No, this is a little kid's book.
Yeah, it's very sweet.
Very nice, big pictures, a couple of sentences on each page.
Yeah.
It's a book a 3-year-old could read.
Yeah.
Or it's a book, hey, I enjoyed it as an adult, but it is not scary in any way. The goose, when he is flying wildly, Charlie's having a great time.
Yeah. and the corgis are not terrifying to look at.
No, they're kind of little.
Yeah. One of the things I really liked about this book is that it works on a couple different levels, one for children and one for adults. And I like any children's media that does that. For children, there's this very fun trip to London. And for adults, there's, for me, what I thought was a really fun twist at the end. But I'm anxious to talk to Chrissy to find out if that was meant to be a funny adult twist or not.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those books that as an adult you could read over and over again to your child and not be laying there prostrate on your bed thinking, I am going to hide this book so I never have to read again. This is a book that would be fun to read over and over again.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a beautiful book. Let's take a moment and talk about the illustrations of this book.
Oh, yeah.
I will say this, I got to meet the person who drew a couple of the Greek Orthodox illustrations in Chrissy's books.
Oh,
What
really?
an interesting person, lots of talent. I do not know this illustrator, but they're just beautifully done.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's a watercolor, or I mean it's interesting. I love it. I don't know what medium you would call that.
Yeah. It is very fanciful and beautiful with vibrant tones, but they bleed into one another beautifully.
Yeah, so what we might want to talk to her about that, because part of it almost looks like watercolor in places, but then with maybe black ink or something over
Yeah.
top, in parts.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just a beautiful, beautiful little looking book. And from a non-reader as a child, it was all about the pictures for
Yeah.
me. However, I'm glad I don't remember the picture of the alligator nymphs. But I mean, I liked having a lot of pictures on the page. They
Yeah.
helped me to concentrate, I think, on what mom was reading and add to the story for me. So I think illustrations are big.
Oh, absolutely. So important for kids. Another thing about the illustrations, all the characters' actions are so beautifully portrayed. The expression on Percy's face after he crash lands, like his little mouth is open and his little tongue is sticking out. It's very evocative. And then again, the crash landing, the three little mice, Charlie and his grandparents, are tumbling head over heels, each with a different little expression on their faces, and glasses and hats flying. It's just really very cute.
But you know what? Grandma holds her onto her purse, and I think it's all about the purse.
So it's also very realistic.
There's some realism there, isn't it? Okay, I might be in disarray, but I got my purse.
Yep, I got the purse.
It's a beautiful little story.
So the illustrations are great. The story is great. I was wondering, Linda, do you have a favorite character from the book?
Well, now that I'm older, I mean, Grandma holding on to her purse and also forgetting why they were going to England in the first place, because she's 100 years old. Like, why are we going to England? But Charlie, because
Yeah.
he's resilient and he's clever with the licorice and he overcomes and he has fun on that goose airplane ride to England. So I liked Charlie.
Well, he's definitely the protagonist of the
Well,
story.
yes. Yeah, he is like a little hero, and I like that part of him. What about you, Nance? Who is your favorite?
This maybe comes a little bit from left field, but I believe Percy the Flying Goose was my favorite.
Okay, what is it that you liked about Percy?
I thought he was hilarious because here they basically contract with this goose to get them safely to London, and he absolutely cannot be trusted. I mean, he's hilarious. He gets them there, but the way he is flying them is just crazy and scary, and he crash lands when he land. I mean, the whole thing. But on the other hand, you think, well, he got him there. And I think what I like about him is I think he's just a little subversive. He doesn't do things in just the ordinary way. Sure, he could be a normal goose and just get them there. But what kind of story would that be? He decides to make it fun.
he, he does make it fun. And I like his goggles and his
Yeah.
it looks like a World War II bomber,
Yeah.
whatever you're called, hat, with the ear flaps and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, he was hilarious. And the illustrations made him even more hilarious. But, one of the things you were talking about in terms of Chrissy's background as a child psychologist, the other theme that came out for me, aside from Charlie being able to overcome his fear, his ability to problem solve when they're faced by the corgis, the other thing I really liked was the interdependence that the book models, that They rely on Percy to get them to London. And Percy ultimately can be relied upon. And sometimes his grandparents are there and he relies on them during different aspects of the story. So this idea that there are other people in your life who will be there for you and help you just like you are helping them. So it's a very nice reciprocal relationship that she shows in this story that I thought was just beautiful.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful part too, Nance, because it isn't just Charlie saving the day. The grandparents are helping him too. It's like, I'm taking a goose to England. They're like, it's going to be okay. So there is sort of that back and forth of them helping each other out. And he, of course, helps his grandparents out. So there is a give and take there that's really lovely. I will say, though, that Percy, being your favorite, he did not go to tea with the queen.
He's too busy flying around the world.
Yes. He had his crash landing and he was out of there. He didn't make it. I don't know that Percy would make it to tea with the queen. I don't know. But the mice sure did. So that's a wonderful thing.
Well, this was such a fun book to read. Obviously something really different for us on the Front Porch, but I'm so glad that we chose to do a children's book this year. And I'm really looking forward to talking to Chrissy. I want to know how she got the idea for the book. And I want to ask her too a little bit about the steps to producing the book and how she ended up with this book that is so gorgeous in the end.
Yeah, I'm really eager to talk to her too. We will find out the answers to all those questions and how she came up with Charlie and her underlying takeaways that she wanted to. Knowing Chrissy, it wasn't just putting a cute little story together.
Yeah.
There was a meaning behind it. So I'm interested to talk to her about that. So we look forward to inviting Dr. Chrissy Hart on the Front Porch next time and talking to her about Tea with the Queen. And you can hear her beautiful English accent.
Oh, I am looking forward to that. That will be perfect. Would she mind also reading some Charles Dickens to us while she was?
She probably would. She could probably do any of that for us.
That's great. Well, listeners, get in touch with us by going to our website at frontporchbookclub.com.
Our episodes come out twice a month on the first and third Wednesdays. If you like the show, be sure to leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts.
Well, this was great walking down memory lane with you, Lenny.
Oh, you too, Nance, as always.
Well, see you next time.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.